Bonjour tout le monde. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be joining you here in Vientiane to start because this is the first time a Canadian Prime Minister has visited Laos, but also because we've had a highly productive time here at what is my third consecutive ASEAN summit, a summit made successful and possible by our gracious and welcoming Laotian hosts led by Prime Minister Siphandon. But before I get into it today, I want to talk about the fact that our National Pharmacare Bill, Bill C-64, just got royal assent. This is a big deal and great news for many Canadians. It means free insulin is coming for every Canadian who needs it, ensuring that they don't have to choose between putting food on the table and getting the life-saving medication they require. And it means we'll be providing prescription contraceptives for free, because we not only believe in a woman's right to choose, but we act on it. This is real progress. But now we need the provinces and territories to come to the table and sign agreements with us that supports Canadians and takes pressure off their household budgets as soon as possible. I've also seen the devastating images from the ground in the U.S. after Hurricane Milton made landfall yesterday. My heart goes out to everyone affected by this tragic disaster. I know Canadians are already rolling up their sleeves, some there to restore power, others there to help neighbours in need. We are all thinking of our friends to the south. Today we're here in Laos because when we formed government, we made a commitment to invest in Canada's relationship in the Indo-Pacific, to invest in strengthening ties with ASEAN, because these relationships matter. They matter because in an increasingly complex and unstable world, strong partnerships built on mutual trust are the only way we can create a safe and prosperous future. They matter because we need to be skating where the puck is going. ASEAN is the fastest growing region in the world and plays a central consensus-building role, not just here in Asia, but around the globe. And in just a few years, we're all seeing remarkable results. Since 2015, Canada's trade with ASEAN has nearly doubled. And that didn't happen by accident. It happened because our trade ministers, particularly Mary, has led many successful trade missions to the region with hundreds of Canadian businesses. Most recently to Malaysia and Vietnam earlier this year, and with the Philippines and Indonesia coming this December. It also happened because we have deliberately built up our presence and leaned into the right relationships. Collectively, ASEAN is now Canada's fourth largest trading partner with almost $40 billion in annual trade. This means countless new opportunities for Canadian and ASEAN businesses alike. It means more community-building, middle-class jobs on both sides of the Pacific. And it means access to a wider variety of goods and services at affordable prices. That's real progress that our people can see and feel. It's not just me saying it. As one ASEAN leader said directly to me this week, our relationship is hitting levels beyond anything we ever aspired to. It is never done, and this year is no different. At the conclusion of this year's summit, we released a joint statement highlighting, among other things, our work together in the digital space, recognizing that Canada is already a leader in AI and other technologies that will shape the 21st century global economy. I have to pause on that for a sec because it was extremely exciting to see Geoffrey Hinton win the Nobel Prize for Physics for his work developing AI earlier this week. I actually called him from a refueling stop on the way over and was extremely excited to see not just what he's been able to do, but the thoughtful approach he has on making sure that AI stays focused on serving citizens and building a better economy and not necessarily on destabilizing or hurting people. This is work we need to stay on. Quite frankly, the fact that Canada is in many ways at the origin of modern AI is something that we should both step up on and make sure we're continuing to build on. In my conversations with ASEAN this week, I pointed out that AI is going to be incredible as a leverage to build success and opportunity, particularly people who have so much need for economic opportunity and growth, and that's where Canada can step in and be a partner with communities and countries like here in ASEAN as we work on technology that's going to make a huge difference in the lives of millions of people around the world. On the world stage, Canada is working with ASEAN on maritime safety, cybersecurity, the prevention of transnational organized crime and terrorism, and enhancing the rights of women and girls across the globe. And we're working towards the conclusion of a Canada-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, a Canada-Indonesia Free Trade Agreement, and the expansion of the CPTPP, all of which will promote inclusive economic growth and development that strengthens the middle class in our respective countries. But these aren't just words. We're taking action. We're investing in projects to fight climate change and protect the environment, like the Lao Monsoon Wind Power Project, the first large-scale wind power project in this country, and supporting the Mekong River Commission to protect a vital driver of economic growth for millions of people. We're addressing global security challenges by providing training to combat cyber threats from malicious actors. We've stepped up on our military and security partnerships, including more deployments to this pivotal region. We're enhancing our energy cooperation, particularly in nuclear power and in renewables. And we're upgrading our offices in Cambodia and Laos into full embassies next year, meaning that we will soon have Canadian embassies in all 10 ASEAN member states.
In the press conference, one question, one follow-up. First question, David Aiken, Global News.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Good morning, Ambassador. Good afternoon, Prime Minister.
If you're keeping track of what time it is, you're better than me.
I do have an ASEAN question, but before I do, I would like to get you to respond to the latest events in the Israel-Lebanon war. A Canadian is killed. Peacekeepers are wounded. You and the Prime Ministers in New Zealand and Australia, we heard your comments, have to de-escalate and no violence. So given the latest developments, what now does Canada do? What now do the three of you do?
First of all, my heart goes out to the family of the Canadian who was killed, to the families of everyone with loved ones in the region who are affected by the ongoing violence. We need that violence to end. We need a ceasefire in Lebanon and in Gaza. We need to get more humanitarian aid in. We need to see the hostages released. We need to see a credible path towards a two-state solution once again. I was glad to sit down with my Australian and New Zealand counterparts to continue the conversations we're having on how to put pressure and ensure that everyone in the region is working towards a lasting peace and protecting civilian lives. And we're going to continue to do that work.
On ASEAN, you may or may not be here next year, might be in the middle of an election, who knows, or some other outcome might happen. Can you explain the work you've done here to be here 3 times in a row? Is it built to survive you and your government? And what would you say to a successor who might be considering different opportunities?
We know that ASEAN is the fastest growing region in the world. The interest by Canadian businesses from coast to coast to coast in being part of this booming economic opportunity is real. It's not about an ideological choice to say, oh, okay, let's make nice with Southeast Asia. It's about understanding that this part of the world gives a tremendous opportunity for Canada, but also an opportunity for ASEAN as Canada engages. And that's really a big piece of the challenge, making sure that we are showing up as leader, yes, but more importantly, showing up as businesses on trade missions, building those connections, making the investments in more maritime security presence and defense presence, making more investments in upgrading embassies and opening trade offices. This is not about a government footprint. This is about creating those opportunities for farmers, for startups, for businesses from coast to coast to coast who import from this region or export to this region. This is about growing a strong economy into the 21st century by harnessing the natural connections we have with so many diaspora communities from this part of the world. This just makes sense. It takes effort and it takes a serious commitment to getting it done, which we've done over the past few years, but that need to continue because Canadians need it to continue. I had a brief exchange with Prime Minister Modi in which I emphasized that there is work that we need to do. I won't go into details of what we talked about, but what I've said many times is that the safety of Canadians and upholding the rule of law is one of the fundamental responsibilities of any Canadian government, and that's what I'll stay focused on. Yes, we need to continue to develop our trade ties and our people-to-people ties, but there are real issues that we need to solve for, and we're going to stay focused on that.
Ashley Burke, CBC News. Prime Minister, in English and French, you've gone public with your allegations that there were credible allegations linking India to the killing of a Canadian Sikh activist. Do you still believe that India has stopped allegedly, or do you believe that India has allegedly stopped trying to kill its enemies in Canada?
Keeping Canadians safe is one of the fundamental jobs of any Canadian government. And ensuring public safety was why I shared those credible allegations a year ago, and why since then we have been working diligently to do everything we can to keep Canadians safe now and into the future by ensuring that the rule of law is followed and upheld, and that the appropriate actions are being taken. I won't go into anything further now, but Canadians can know and can be confident that this is an issue that has remained at the forefront of my mind and my responsibilities as leader since the very beginning.
Minister Jolie said that there still is a threat. Do you believe that too?
We are seeing troubling patterns of violence affecting Indo-Canadians right across the country over the past number of months, and this is an issue that I can assure you that we will continue to be very, very seized with, and we will ensure that our responsible authorities continue to do the right work.
Judy Schwen with CTV News. U.S. presidential candidate and former President Donald Trump announced yesterday that he will renegotiate the Canada-Mexico-U.S. trade agreement. What is your comment, and how are you going to reassure Canadian businesses that the protectionist turmoil they experienced the last time Trump ripped up NAFTA will not be felt this time? Because Kamala Harris has also said that she will renegotiate the agreement.
We've been here before. We know that there is a certain amount of protectionist sentiment in the United States right now, and indeed in the world. Over the past decade, we've seen many countries in the world turn away from trade deals, move in more insular directions. But Canada has successfully bucked that trend. Over the past decade, we've successfully negotiated to conclusion a free trade deal with Europe, a free trade deal with the significant Asian economies within the CPTPP. We've moved forward on successfully renegotiating NAFTA in a deal that had bipartisan support in the U.S. Congress. We did it by standing up for Canadian jobs, for demonstrating how integrated, in the case of the United States, our economies already are, and we are ready to do it again if necessary. I think Canadians and Americans have always successfully worked together to create opportunities that far go beyond each of our individual countries. We've done this before. We can do that again if we need to, but we'll do it by putting Canadian interests first and foremost, as we have every other time. Okay.
A recent survey of ASEAN nations found that their greatest concern when it comes to geopolitical issues is Israel's war against Hamas. Given that there are 4 Muslim-majority nations within the ASEAN bloc who view the West, the U.S., and also Canada in that bloc as being hypocritical in their support for Israel, which has at times flouted international law in its war in Gaza. How do you balance that international perspective with domestic criticism coming from the conservative leader that your government and you have been too sympathetic to the Palestinian cause and have not done enough to stop anti-Semitism in Canada and tamp down the messages that are being furthered in pro-Palestinian marches across the country?
Our position has been very, very clear. We've been calling for a ceasefire for many, many months now, since the end of last year. We've been pushing for more humanitarian aid. We've been pushing for the hostages to be released, for Hamas to lay down its arms and have no role for Hamas in the future governance of Gaza. We've been pushing on Israel to abide by international law, even as it has the right to defend itself. We've been working with partners and allies around the world to ensure that we get back on a path towards a 2-state solution with a peaceful, secure Israel living alongside a peaceful and secure Palestinian state, with a Lebanon that's territorial integrity is respected as well. These are the principles and the values that Canada has always put forward. And quite frankly, one of the advantages of coming to a summit like this at ASEAN is we get to look other leaders in the eyes directly, leaders with a range of perspectives on various issues, and hear from them and discuss how we're going to make sure we all work together to bring peace to the region and opportunity for everyone.
Next question.
Hi. I'm wondering, so let me backtrack a little bit. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken raised concerns about the disputes in the South China Sea, calling China's behavior increasingly dangerous and unlawful. I'm wondering if you could state Canada's position on the conflicts and whether you can give some insight on if any of the countries brought this up with you in bilats.
Oh, it's a regular subject of conversation with obviously the Philippines, with also other countries from the region, with our friends in Australia and New Zealand as well. Canada's position is shared by those countries. It's a long-standing position that the international law needs to be respected, the international law of the sea, the UN charter and frameworks. These are things that we abide by and not just stand by on paper, but we demonstrate that every time we send a Coast Guard vessel or a military CAF ship through the South China Sea. It is international waters and needs to be open for all navigation.
You mentioned in the beginning that pharmacare passed. Right now, Parliament is in a bit of a standstill. How do you plan on getting things back on track in the House of Commons?
Our focus is on Canadians. The fact that PharmaCare has made it out of Parliament means that now we get to do the work of bringing on board provinces and actually delivering free insulin for Canadians who are struggling making ends meet right now. We know that, for example, people who skip their insulin because they have to pay rent or they need to put food on their table face the risk of much more serious health outcomes that can include blindness and amputations, at the same time as they end up costing much more to already stressed health systems. So delivering free insulin just makes sense to people who don't have coverage and can't afford it. That's what we're starting with. So I'm looking forward to signing deals rapidly with provinces over the coming months that's going to deliver this life-saving medication to Canadians who are in need. Similarly, we know women are increasingly challenged with the high cost of getting an IUD or getting prescription contraceptives. This will take the burden off of them in terms of family planning so that they can make the right choices for themselves and actually be able to have more money to spend on the things that we know are high cost right now. This is a measure moving forward on PharmaCare negotiations with the provinces that will help Canadians in their health and help them in their pocketbook. But that's something we need to work on right now. That's something all parliamentarians, if they're listening to the constituents, should be working on, but it's certainly something that my government is going to stay focused on.
Thank you. Last question.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Olivia Spanovich, CBC Radio. You had a chance to meet with some of your partners from the Five Eyes, Australia and New Zealand, and we understand that China came up as part of the discussion. What would you say is the biggest single threat your countries are facing from China, and how do you plan to mitigate it?
I think the issue of dealing with China is one that we've been grappling with over the past many years. There are issues in which we can and should be cooperating or coordinating with China. The Kunming-Montreal COP15 on biodiversity last year was a good example of that, where the work that China and Canada did together brought together the Global South on a very ambitious measure to protect nature around the world. So there are ways in which we need to work with China as a significant global player. There are other ways in which we're going to need to compete with China for market access on critical minerals, on delivering the ingredients for a clean technology future that rely on rare earth elements and critical minerals that Canada has to offer, and we're developing those solutions so we can directly compete with China on supply chains that they've managed to corner over the past decades, but that our partners and countries around the world are increasingly needing to find diverse supply chains for. And then there are areas in which we are going to be directly contesting and challenging China. The continued interference in both diaspora communities and our democratic systems. The use of coercive diplomacy, for example, the unjustified detention of the two Michaels. These are things that we will continue to push back on and, of course, work together on as allies and partners around the world to make sure we're demonstrating the values and the principles for which we will always stand clear and strong.
Back to the topic of India, have you personally seen any cooperation from India from Canada's investigation? And why is it that the U.S. seems to have gotten more answers from India from its assassination allegations?
I'm not going to get into details on this at this particular moment. What I will say is that the statement I made around credible allegations of India's involvement in the death of a Canadian on Canadian soil continues to stand. That our responsibility as a government to keep Canadians safe in their homes, in their communities, right across our country, remains one of the top preoccupations of this government. And I can assure everyone that law enforcement and our national security agencies continue to be deeply engaged on this issue, and we'll always put the safety and well-being of Canadians and respect for the rule of law at the forefront of everything we do. Merci.
Thank you, Prime Minister. That concludes today's press conference.